My name is Ken Buckland. I'm with the Cecil Group. My partner, Steve Cecil, had another conflict with the meetings, but you'll be seeing him from now on as well as me as we proceed in this process of doing the zoning study. I want to talk a little bit about what we're going to try to accomplish within here. Talk specifically with you about the public forum and get some input from you on that. And get some other ideas about what your key concerns are regarding the zoning and the rezoning study that we're talking about today. This is the study area that we're going to be looking at for Thompsonville. The line stops at about the school, comes up to what I think that most people consider the Thompsonville neighborhood. And we're going to be taking a key focus on what happens within this walking distance within the downtown, the Bigelow Mill, where the future rail line is going to be running through the study area.
Your upper limit, sir, where the red line is. Can you identify that?
I just got the GIS information, so I don't know exactly.
Well, I see some markings, and what's the markings?
This is housing that runs up here. Here's Alden and Enfield Street, as you can probably.
That's Alden Avenue.
This is Alden Avenue right here. So we're going above Alden to the end of the road right of way that extends through here with the housing in this particular neighborhood.
Windsor Street. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. Why I ask, because and by the looks you can tell I've been here for a while. They had talked about extending up to Jose. They had talked for a long while of extending up to Great Brook, I thought, or up into that area.
What? Extending the road further?
No. The area that they were studying. But that's okay. I think
we were looking at all those R33s and that seemed like the natural.
But they are going beyond Alden Avenue?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
this whole, and both sides of Enfield Street up to I-91.
So they'd be going down into the hollow then, so they are about up to there then.
Right.
Okay.
We'll take
And
another closer.
as I said, we just got our GIS information, part of the process we're going to be doing right now.
I was just trying to orient myself to what you have on the map.
Sure. We're going to be looking at further information, and that's part of our process in doing this. So why don't I walk through what we have in terms of a schedule and ideas that we're going to be looking at as we proceed. I should point out that although we're a planning and design firm and we do quite a bit of downtown TOD and medium-sized communities studies within the New England region, we also have with us two key sub-consultants. One is Bonds and Company, real estate economists and market analysis people. The other is Fitzgerald and Halliday, engineers that look at right-of-way, street system, circulation, and how that plays out in terms of the connection. So when we think about the idea of transit-oriented development, we're getting this concept of transit and movement of people as the key pieces that make the land use work. And if we get those two pieces together and have a market appropriate for it, then we've got our concept, our elements of a good study. Well, as we're just starting out now in the initial review and analysis, we're collecting reports, we're interviewing people. In fact, I had my first interview tonight. While I was eating some food, Sylvia was giving me an earful about Thompsonville and her time here as well. We'll be doing some more of those, and we're getting some names of people for that purpose. When we get into the second month, after the consultants understand what's going on, and we get a little bit of idea of where you're coming from, what we want to do is take it out to a broader forum. Let people know what we found, how we understand the neighborhood and the village center, and think about how we might approach that, and then get people to respond to us and give us a dialogue, a conversation that we can discuss what makes sense. Because as you well know, zoning can be a tough thing to get a hold of. It's a lot like reading War and Peace in the original Russian language. It's a tough thing for some people to get the details of it. You guys all know it because you've been involved in the zoning of the community. But we have to have a carefully structured process with the public so that they understand what they could do, what they can accomplish with zoning, appropriately constructed. So that'll be the community conversation. After that, after we get a little bit better direction about where we should be going with the rezoning, what we'll do is we'll do some more detailed analyses, get the market assessment, talk about the susceptibility to change within the, what properties actually should change or would, or are likely to change and why. Look at those and start to piece those together as a mosaic within the study area. Look at what other alternatives there are as well too. We have a big library of zoning bylaws and regulations, and what we do is we show people what other communities have done as a way to understand what your opportunities or your options are for approaching the rezoning, and look at some of the case studies about what that's meant. And then finally, what we'll go through is the actual zoning themselves, the zoning regulations, and what those key pieces are. Now, as you well know, zoning itself doesn't make everything happen on its own. There are other program elements that come along with substantial change and improvements that you may want to see. And we'll present those as part of that process so you understand that it's not just, you can't just rely on the zoning and rezoning to make the changes you might want to have, that you'll be looking for other opportunities. And then what we'll be doing is coming to you as a commission with draft and final regulations so that we can discuss them and review them as part of that process. Are there any questions about what we're talking about in terms of and we're looking at about a 6-month schedule to try to accomplish this as well.
Well, this is similar to doing a master plan of development, really, to having
That's correct.
the input and so forth, right?
That's correct. And
Except you're focusing on one section.
exactly.
Yep.
And as a strategic plan, it's focused on what we could accomplish within this particular district that makes sense on a district level. But you'll see this as part of an element in the larger community of what this means and what it could mean to the community as a whole as well. Since you have gone through the planning process, we have been collecting quite a few of the plans, and I'm assuming that you're familiar with a number of those ones that have come through. We'd like to have a little bit of input as to how we should be focusing on this public forum coming up, probably in February. We have a number of different options. We could do it as a weeknight. We could do it as a weekend morning. We could do it as an open house and a public forum, a public discussion. There's several different ways to do that. We can provide you with some of those ideas, and you can look at those and make some decisions. But if you've seen anything that's been successful within the last planning processes you've gone through, we'd love to hear that now from the commission.
I would say, on our last plan of development, the turnout for the master plan, to me, was sort of disappointing.
The one that I thought was good was the one that was at JFK School.
Right.
That was the best
But-
one.
Yeah, but it was
That was
small.
the first one. It might have been
that-
the first forum.
But that was the largest, and if this is concentrating on downtown T-ville, I think the
It has to be
meeting should
here.
be held in this area. I think it will raise a lot of people's interest because people are interested in downtown. We've seen that. I don't know, what weekends perhaps the best? I don't know, because we had evening meetings, and I don't think we got the turnout that, we had more turnout when we went to adopt it than almost at the meetings.
But unfortunately, sometimes that works out. And we did try, I mean, we had.
We did.
We had also, on ETV, we had library posters all over town, reminder ads and inserts and JI articles, and we certainly gave it our best try to get people interested. I mean, you're right, it was somewhat frustrating because after the JFK initial one, which we did have a really nice turnout, it was tough. So any ideas that you guys have to get people out, would be welcome, I think. We'll give it our best shot. I mean,
I'd put flyers like in the local businesses in Thompsonville and stuff, so, you know, when people go in there, they can at least see it and let them know that there's, you know, just get it out there.
And I'm thinking, like,
Be
I don't know if
succeeded.
Alcorn still has like a cafeteria, but it's so close to here,
They could walk.
they can
yeah,
walk,
either
and
that
they
or-
don't have to worry
Maybe
about
that
it.
would be a
It has
good
a community
spot.
room also that we've had meetings before in Bigelow, so.
Oh, that's,
I mean, it's not like.
That's
we're-
smaller,
we're-
though.
It is small.
I don't know.
What do you-
I haven't been there lately, so
Alcorn has
you're
a
at downtown.
Yeah, Alcorn.
big gym on the back.
They do,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'll
Well,
find
they have
out.
their cafeteria with
It's
a
it's a
stage.
combination.
Yeah, it's a combination.
Yeah, it's good size, probably hold on 300 people.
But and they have a nice parking lot.
Yeah, big parking lot, and it's in walking distance for a lot of the,
People that, sure.
So then there would be
Makes-
probably no
that makes sense,
excuse, really, that you'd be able to get a lot of people out, whether they drive or not.
I'll find out if it's available for public forums, but.
For a study like this, our timeframe is probably 2 to 3 hours is how long we can keep people's attention and with a number of different
Well, I
exercises.
think you'll have their
during the process.
attention
Yeah,
once you
I think
start,
so.
because we found that anytime you mention downtown, that they're quite concerned.
So that idea of focusing on the downtown and maybe in the images that we put on the poster that we start to put out, we show downtown as part of the graphic that comes along with it. That makes a lot of sense. In terms of an evening meeting versus a weekend, a Saturday morning meeting, have you had any experience in
I don't
those?
think we've tried Saturday morning.
I've never done
I know,
weekend.
we've
and
always
Have you
done
tried
It's
Saturday?
nights.
always been nights.
Saturday's good? Oh,
Saturdays are good?
we're getting the thumbs up from the,
Well, ours were evening, and I was wondering if
Yeah.
that made a difference, and they
Yeah,
are
we could try
weekdays
Saturday.
too, I think.
yeah.
So people gotta go to work,
with the fire department being in a district, we've found, and we've moved the meetings around,
yeah.
best time is like 5:30 during the week. 7 o'clock, they say, is too late, they like to get out of work and come by, and that's what we've been keeping our meetings at, and it's been working perfect. But we had 7 o'clock, and they complained it's too late, I don't want to go home and eat and then go out again. So around 5:30 during the week is where we've been successful in T-ville. So if that helps you at all.
Yeah, he was on the fire commission in Teal, so that's.
Okay.
But,
Good.
but if he's saying that Saturdays, and people are home on Saturdays, it's winter time, they aren't gonna be out playing baseball or
Or picnic games.
soccer, or, yeah, or
boating.
going on picnics.
Give it a shot.
Surprised, those kids keep the parents busy.
Oh, yeah, no, I know.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's always hard to get parents with kids in middle school and
But,
with
I
activities.
suppose, how many do you have? Have one, if you could have one at each time, if you have two, try them both days.
We could try the
I think
Saturdays.
a combination of the two would work.
Try Saturdays and see
Maybe
how it works, because
some during the week and a couple on the weekend, or that type of thing.
wintertime, they're not really, their activities aren't as many as in the summer.
One of the things we've done before is have the public forum and then put the information online where people can comment and do an online survey.
That'd be good.
So, then whatever time they have available, then they can respond. And we've had very good responses for the form-based code we did in here, just down south of here was we got something like 250 responses online for.
Jose, what was our responses to our mailings, do you remember?
Yeah, that was more direct mail. It was a random, I don't recall the exact, it wasn't bad. We had, from,
Acceptable?
it was acceptable. It wasn't below a level that we thought would, make the results invalid. But one of the things I was hoping to do in our department page, actually set up a separate web page for the study and maybe link out, to the surveys, to the, as I get information, I would post it to a specific page that people could go to within our town webpage. And, one of the things I did ask was if I asked ATV if they could give me a cut of this portion of the meeting and maybe post a link to that so people could get at least a initial review of what we're planning to do. So whatever we can to publicize it, I'm going to try, and including a webpage that we can have surveys and have people.
Yeah, just so they can respond. So the idea is you get a dialogue going, that there's some interaction between the public and...
That way you sort of extend the public hearings, extend the public forums, people could, I'll see if we can even set up the same type of email list that we have for agendas and at least on a temporary basis while the study's going on, people could sign up for that and get information and be able to send things in. So I'm going to sit down with our IT department and see exactly what we can do.
Okay. Any other thoughts on public forum? If not, what I wanted to do, just to in the last part here, is to ask you about your key concerns regarding zoning in there. If you can give me the top couple of issues that you think are affecting us that we should be looking at carefully, then I would appreciate it.
Well, the biggest thing to me is the fact that the lots are zoned in such a way that everyone has to ask for a special permit to do anything.
Right.
Everything's non-conforming, or?
The whole area is non-conforming to what is zoned, so it has to be brought into some kind of conformance.
You have major parking problems down there?
Parking problems in the village center,
Right,
There's no
The
place.
whole area.
or the whole area?
yeah. The
whole area.
whole area you're talking about.
Because of the number of units, number of people.
And the size of the lots, which means, yeah, the number of people.
Anything else?
We had talked for a long time as trying to create like a small business section down there. It used to be quite vibrant, and they always have talked about the possibility of bringing it back. I don't know if you could have just small shops and create somehow of, and talk to Jose, I don't know if you could do just a pedestrian area for these shops or set up something. You go to some of these larger cities that have done redevelopment on their waterfronts, and we have a beautiful waterfront, which is another problem, but we have no access. And I don't know if you have pull with Amtrak or any of that, or know someone that does.
It's interesting, we're dealing elsewhere along the same line, further north in Massachusetts and further south in Windsor and Stratford and here on the same line. One of the things that the rail companies see as problematic is that there are a lot of bridges along this line, and if every community has improvements to the underpass or overpasses, then it's going to be an incredibly expensive opportunity for them. So,
Well, our underpasses are really so very narrow. I don't know, the fire department could get, you have,
We had to order a special truck, and it's still tight, but if there was one car on the road, we'd never get through.
So the health and safety issues.
I've lived down there all my life, and I think the answer, maybe one of the answers would be, and I've thought about it a lot. Years ago, a lot of people lived there and didn't have vehicles. They walked to shopping, they walked everywhere, movie theater. I think if you found certain maybe blighted properties or properties the town can purchase and make off-street parking down there, I think you'd be better off. And also, the old bridge, is there a way to work that into putting something back as a walkway or a bike path or something leading into Thompsonville where the supposedly the train station is going to be?
That was the first thing I thought of when I saw the...
Pillars and everything are there. It doesn't
Right.
seem like we spend millions of dollars on the other one. They didn't put a nickel into something down
there
there.
was a design at one time to go out to one of the pillars and put a gazebo out there at the end to allow fishing and so on and so forth off the pier, or people even to sit out there. I've seen the design. Jose, were those the ones that were found?
Yeah, there was an old, it might be part of, you know, when Bigelow did sort of had like their own people do the Northland Corporation, they made it.
I don't think it was them.
Was it before that?
Yeah, well, it was the ones that somebody just
Yeah,
found. Was it
sort of.
Roger found them somewhere?
You're right, there was like a little wharf out there with a gazebo, there was a little amphitheater.
Yeah, they built out a wharf, I don't know if
Arena
it was
on
the
the
first
river,
pier
I
or the
believe.
second pier, and it was in the, and they had a nice area out there with like a gazebo on the main pier for fishing and just going out there.
You said amphitheater, you said, Jose, was it?
I think
Yeah,
part
there
of
was
that,
a-
that
there was-
plan had like a marina
Yep.
down, and I think it had like a little amphitheater with a little stage near the river, so people, you know.
It also, it'll bring access for people from Suffield and Agawam, like years ago, to get in. If T-ville turns out like we like it to be, it'd be a nice thing to have down there, to come from Suffield again. Not by vehicle, but
Oh, you're right. Well, no, this wasn't even coming from Suffield. This just
Yeah.
went out on ours, and it was out, I don't know how many piers, it was on our side. It didn't connect over. It was a walkway.
Yeah, it was almost like a fishing wharf that.
Yeah, it was a
that-
fishing
that
is it
ended at-
possible
at
to
the
connect
first
it,
pillar.
Jose, back to Suffield? I mean, everything's there, the pillars are there, we wouldn't need much.
Well, everything's possible if you have money in it.
Yeah.
Well, seems like we're gonna spend a lot of money now.
It's,
Marty Levitz had a proposal once he came in, and he was talking about along Freshwater Brook, on the section from north, or along Main Street there, is having the restaurants a double level that look down on Freshwater Brook on the backside there. That never went through, but that was developing that side of Freshwater Brook. You remember that?
I remember that, right on Main Street.
Right on Main Street across from the mills, and he had several restaurants and several, well, that was part of that thing that Roger found.
yeah, there was a schematic plan that was drawn up that showed did show all those areas.
Yeah.
Possibilities.
Well, we'll be able to kick around a number of these ideas as we go through the process, and we start thinking about it. Well, I just want to get an initial reading from you about
Can I
what
throw
things we
something
make.
at Charlie?
Yes.
Back in the 90s, I believe we hired some consulting group to put together a plan, Thompsonville revitalization. And I don't know what happened to that plan, but it might be worth looking at that and finding out what went right, what went wrong, not to do the same things, use somebody else's experience so that, the plan was there, and there must have been something good
It's
with
still
it.
there, yeah.
But it never really got fully developed for some reason, and I don't know why, but you might want to take that into account.
That was mostly advice where they told the
That was
towns.
the Shapiro, is that the
The
one?
Shapiro report, yeah.
That was a while
That was the
ago.
Thompsonville revitalization strategy, I believe that.
Yeah, it was the
1992,
Shapiro
yeah.
report,
Yeah,
which
Shapiro.
basically recommended don't
Shapiro was
pull out your
later.
town functions and move them elsewhere, but they did.
Shapiro was a very quick,
Yeah.
where they came
They
in
had a lot
for
of
3 days
suggestions.
and did a sort of a, what I call a kamikaze. They had some very people who were experts in urban, retail come in and do a very quick white paper on it. It was not a lot of meat, just said, here's the issues,
Yeah,
and here's what you should be looking at. You
Yep.
shouldn't be looking at this. I think the revitalization strategy is what Peter's talking about. Back in the 90s, that formed, ended up forming with the predecessor to the ERSC and all that. And actually, I think ended up with the Thompsonville zoning that we have now, the Thompsonville Village Center zoning, that was adopted, I
it did.
think, was a
We did.
direct result of that plan.
because we changed the zoning to allow the shops to be right up on the
Right.
sidewalks and so on and so forth.
And that has
Signs.
some of the elements that you were talking about with, down, there's a core district that only allows retail on the first floor.
Yep.
Offices and only pedestrian-oriented types of uses on the first floor, and then on the upper floors, you could have either residential or office. But that came out of that Thompsonville revitalization
Anyway,
strategy.
there's some good ideas in there that might be a benefit, and there might be some ideas that kind of bombed, you don't want to
Well,
touch.
that's what I was going to say. In our zoning regs, we have that special Thompsonville Center zone.
Right.
There are things that I think are barriers for people in there, that they look at them and they just feel like it's an extra layer for them to go through, and they don't want to go through that process, so then they might look elsewhere in town and not put their business down there. I think we have to make it easier and not harder, but also look at the reasons for what they did there, and a lot of it was like historic things. So you'd want to preserve some of the historic, but also without putting up all these extra barriers.
Right. You can maintain the character, but not put up such big barriers to actually enter the area.
So, Charlie, do we have to have a set zoning? In other words, what if we had people who inquired, can we create a zoning what they would need? Let's say somebody came down here and said, I want to put in a pub, brewery, and restaurant where you can make beer, like they have in Northampton and other places, and we fit them somewhere down there, but the zoning, then can you make that zoning fit what they would need so they would come to Thompsonville?
You can't keep
You
messing
can't do that,
around
can you?
because that's called
So I'm
spot
just,
zoning.
no, I know, that's what I'm asking you, if there's any way, if someone has, like Lori just said, they see somebody red tape, they're gonna say, I'm not even going there, I'll look somewhere else. In other words, if they come to us, yeah, we can help you, here's what we can do for you.
This is.
Is that what you were talking about, Lori? It's make it easier.
Often.
Right,
simpler.
like I was saying, like, maybe the first step is, we don't have this section in the zoning specific to them, that they have to go to this other committee, and they have to do this, and they have to do that. It's very limited and restrictive, so when they look at it and they think, I have to go to another board before
Yeah,
I come to you.
there's too many hoops. I have always felt that. They have to get down to redevelopment, right? Or revitalization, which, they have to go to revitalization, well, they have to really go through, show them their plans and show them this, and get their yes or no, and then they have to advise us, which I guess regulations,
It's an advisory committee,
it's an
Yes.
advisory committee.
non-binding on the commission.
It's not binding on us.
However, it's
But it's an
another
extra hoop that they have to jump through.
So I'm saying, for an area that this town is looking to promote business, we actually make it harder,
Right.
because there's more
You have
processes
to
for
go
them
to-
to go
yeah.
through.
She's
So
absolutely
I'm
right.
saying, ease the processes so that they don't have all of these to
Right.
go
So-
through.
Right.
Because if you look at it, not that the downstairs, when they went to this committee, not that they would maybe say no, or they might advise, but you're talking most times, that's another 2 weeks, and then they have
It's not
another 2
only
weeks.
that, it's more
and-
expensive. They've
and
got
it's-
an attorney and an architect and all those people.
And it's just
that are-
a barrier.
That's right.
So for an area that we're trying to get businesses to go there, we're actually making it harder for them.
So what we call the entitlement process to getting the permits,
Right.
you want to make that so it's clear and easy to follow.
Right.
And you want to make sure you've hit all the numbers, but have the cookbook clearly stated what the points have to be done.
Yeah.
And how it can be done efficiently.
Right.
It makes all the difference. We see this so often with some regulations where somebody will say, well, I really want a form-based code because that's going to make it so much easier for everybody to come in. Well, if you don't draft it correctly, it can be just as hard as having a normal zoning
Right,
with a more classic kind of zoning that's more restrictive on the uses, and have that problem with the brewery and pub idea that comes along with it.
Well, we've always been open to have people come in and make suggestions in that we change zones. In fact, we've done that when somebody's come in and said, this doesn't fit, and we just created the housing zone.
Housing zone, yeah.
Yeah,
Family guy.
Yep.
so we're always willing to, entertain things for that.
I
But I think that would be a good idea, because that might be a place to attract down there if you got a brewery,
That'd be huge.
yeah.
Another thing, going back to, like you said, the different layers of, like Lori was saying, different groups, different commissions you got to go in front of, all of them have different ideas.
Yes.
And when you go to Revite, and I've gone to a lot of them, some of them are really looking to put Thompsonville back to what Thompsonville was in 1965. You're never going to do that.
Well-
And I think there's got to be, some of those people have to understand, you're not going to bring back what we lost and tore down. It's a whole different generation, it's a different era, and people are looking for different things.
Right.
You
Right.
got it.
You have to modernize your regulations.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And like Revite, when you go there, they're always thinking, well, they did this in Thompsonville in 1955. It's not going to happen again, it's impossible.
And that's one of the reasons, I think, the Cecil Group scored well amongst the interviews. They had sub-consultants that had the market analysis, the real estate market experts on there. Because a lot of times we write regulations and sit around and wait for something to happen, and nothing happens. And that's
Well,
usually-
you need a-
And you need a good person with a marketing analysis to say, okay, you have a great idea, we'd like to have this, but the guy might come in and say, you're not going to get a brew pub. We've always had people say, we want a Christmas tree shop here.
You're right. They are always telling me
When you
it's
talk to the
coming.
market people and people who knew that, they said, doesn't fit their demographic, so.
You know, you go way back.
Whatever you want to try to track something, but if you don't have the market for it, you're not
You
gonna
go
get
way
it.
back, and we had J.C. Penney's downtown, you had Carlisle's, you had
Western
J.C.
Auto.
Grant,
Penny's
Western
not coming
Auto.
back downtown.
You had all these people downtown, and
But you had the mill, too. People
you had
were
the mill
working there.
too.
Yeah, that's
And
what-
all they always hoped when the mill changed to the apartments, it would bring all this back.
Didn't.
But I think
Yeah, there was other
Dominic
problems,
is right.
but-
It's not,
And you got to remember, when they did, and I call it urban destruction,
That's
urban
right.
renewal, they tore all these places down, and on their mind was, let's force them into a business district where the mall is. That was the whole mentality of this, and it didn't work. And all the money that was out there to redo Thompsonville since 1978, nothing's been done. And I said, we need new ideas. I think your group is great, and you're listening and taking notes. And we know what we need for the town, and again, it's modern times, you're not gonna put back 1965 Thompsonville. They tried to open that movie theater for, what, 30 years?
Yeah.
Nobody's gonna go to a movie theater down there, it's not gonna happen. It's not gonna happen.
it'd make a nice stage, like you have a lot of these stage people, the good
Yeah.
plays.
Theatrical group.
But they
Yeah,
took the main
theatrical
parking
group.
lot out down there, and that killed a lot of places
Well,
down there.
that's no parking, that's
Yep.
right.
We had a lot of parking. Now it's gone.
I think, in my opinion, back when we did this in the 90s, the whole idea was we wanted to attract people to go down there, give them a reason to go
That's
down
right.
there.
Correct.
Little novelty, specialty shops and things like that. But you're fighting a couple of issues here. One is safety, two is access, three is parking, and aesthetics. If it's a dumpy area, nobody's going to want to go
right.
there. So it's got to look nice, it has to be easy to get to, and it has to be convenient for parking, and there have to be things that people want to go there for.
Commerce, more commerce, that's what
Look
they
at
took
some of the
out.
things that people have done, like the section up towards the library, they've redone that. Sylvia did a nice job of the place
the
where
homes on
her
Pleasant
other-
Street.
the one on, down below where she
Yeah,
started.
yeah, Pleasant Street.
Pleasant Street.
Yeah.
So a lot of, the things are there, if they want to bring them back.
As far as the safety part of it, and I think Peter's referring to the problems we had over the years, it's.
It has a reputation.
It has a reputation, but I can tell you the chief of police we have now, and I live there, and it was terrible going home. It's all cleaned up, it's peaceful, it's quiet, so that part of this is done, just about finished. So now it's time to get guys like you involved and tell us how we move forward. But the safety part, I think, has been addressed very well by our chief of police and the local police
You
department.
know what Dominic says, like you talk about a brew pub would draw, or things of that type, or a restaurant like they
The
were talking.
food is so important. in-
Sylvia has a nice
making it
restaurant
draw.
down there, but
Sylvia's food is
People that have a
absolutely
bad
marvelous.
reputation.
Sylvia's food is absolutely marvelous. That's the kind of business person you want
Right.
down there.
Yes.
Because it's a unique product, and it isn't found anywhere else, and people will come for long distances to as
do.
a destination.
Yep.
It becomes a point of attraction. The other ideas of destination are what kind of public amenities there are. You know, this idea of the walkway over the river, or something that's down on the river, so people come through to get to that destination, that activity. The whole way they look at the green space within there, how this is being used in the. and how
Well,
it
a
can be
perfect
looked-
example is I had a cousin of mine, she's a school teacher in Windsor, and I said, we'll go down some, I go, something to eat, and we were worried about going down there. Well, since I took her down there, that was a year ago, they have this women's group with the Windsor School or school department, whatever they do. They go once a month back over there, and they're very content with it. So, once you get people to try it and come to Thompsonville, they realize it's not as bad as what it used to be.
And some of it requires enough density, enough volume of businesses and activities to
does.
start pulling people in and make it not just a one stop, but actually coming to this and getting out of your car, parking in a location, and start to walk around and enjoy the opportunities that are provided with these changes. That's exactly the kind of thing that we will try to create in our communities that we work in.
Like Northampton. We go up there, we'll go out to dinner, we'll park somewhere, then we'll take a walk and go get an ice cream, and we spend 4 or 5 hours there. And we spend our money there when we're there.
Northampton, we did a master plan for
tell you, that came out nice.
Northampton, and in fact, there's a whole lot of other issues going on there that you don't necessarily recognize, that you don't see from the outside. What you see is the great attraction that has created because of the particular market, because of the people that are interested in making businesses work, and how they came together in that particular location, in that structure of the downtown. Those are the elements you have to consider as well. And this idea that when we come up with the zoning, you're still not necessarily filling those spaces. And that idea of saying, going around to the region and saying, here's a restaurateur, or here's a business person that's doing a great bang-up good job getting a good business going, and are they interested in opening up a second store or restaurant in a great place where they just had this fabulous mill revitalization project, got all kinds of people there, got a nice structure of a location. That's a marketing. Part of it is the marketing of what you have, and the idea that you can create the structure, the house, the framework within which you can build, but you still have to try to get people to come in and fill those spaces.
Well, the Bigelow Mill, though, I mean, the apartments now, should be a big draw, because there's 740 people live there. So any entrepreneur that's gonna come down and do a restaurant, that's gonna look really good to him, that he has a potential from down the road to pick up over 700 customers.
Well, you have to think about it beyond that as well, too. I mean, just think of the idea of a convenience store. Requires a market area of at least 10 to 12,000 people just to maintain themselves. So you have to think that how do people get access down here? Do they see it as an easy way? Are the signs correctly positioned?
Right.
And are people directed to parking that they can use downtown to go to those locations? So it's more than just the apartment building. It has to be something that goes beyond that.
Right, traction.
Yeah, beyond that.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much for the input.
thank you.
Appreciate that. Looking forward to working closely with the staff and.
Now, you're looking down into our part of the river, too, I see, by that other line that's drawn out into the river.
Yeah, we're going to take a boat out, I think, at some point.
It's beautiful, but again, we've got to figure a way to get there.
Right. Get down to that boat ramp and get out there on the water.
Well,
Yeah. Okay.
okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be looking forward to
Fire department
working with you.
for riding their boat.